It's been said the whole world is a stage and everybody plays a part. But the question remains, who's writing the script?
In the situation where gun violence is done, who is the victim?
The shooter. I mean, I would still say the shot.
I don't know.
We're all victims in some way of life.
Welcome to Around the Fire.
Hey, good to see you. Come join us around the fire. I'm your host, Jason Thomas. In the situation where gun violence is done, who is the victim? The perpetrator or the victim? We're going to try to answer those questions with my guest, Yogi Guyadin, or Y. He is the creator, producer, writer, and performer of a work named Shooter, an interactive, immersive experience. Let's take a look.
Follow me.
Red, holding it for backup. We got a man with a gun that won't put his hands up. Hands up.
Don't shoot. I can't breathe. No, I can't breathe. Don't shoot. I can't breathe. No, I can't breathe. Hands up. Don't shoot. I can't breathe. No, I can't breathe. Shoot a motherfucker that he can't breathe. He can't breathe. No, he can't breathe. Put your hands where I can see him now. Listen to me. Listen to me. You better listen to me.
That was very interesting. One of the things that I noticed about this piece, in terms of the experience, there's so many experiences. There's experience from actually being immersed and a part of that Act One. Mm-hmm. There's even being in Act One, watching the other people react to that situation. And now people are wondering, like, what's going on right now? Explain a little bit about the whole experience.
So, like you said, Jason, it's an immersive piece. So the first thing we do is we let participants know two things. There's an Act 1 and an Act 2. So like you said, it's optional. We tell people that what they go through in Act 1, they're not in any physical danger at all. Right. But it could bring back an emotional memory depending on their experience that could trigger a past situation that might be traumatic. Mm-hmm. And also, we don't know how people are going to react through going to it. So what we do is we display people with that curiosity, and that's the first part of it. They either have to sign up in advance before it, and you sign a waiver, and then you go through this experience. The next thing that happens is we have a greeter, who is a very crucial part in the role, which basically separates who's going to go through Act 1 and who is going to just come in for Act 2. The people who opt out of Act 1, they are treated a little bit differently, where they're asked to wait, they're asked to take this patience role, where the group who chooses Act 1, like yourself, they are now passed into this other section. So when about the time comes, the group of people from this group that is choosing to go into the immersive section is passed off by our greeter into a group of security guards who are actors that do have personal experience in that.
And everybody stayed in character.
Yeah.
Let's go in a little bit about your background.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your story.
Well,
where it comes from.
I start out the play. I'm born on the north side of South Side, Jamaica, Queens, Sutphin Boulevard, a few blocks away from South Road. I was raised in the 80s. I remember the sounds. That's the opening line in this piece. And my story is growing up in, whatever you grow up in is your norm.
Right.
So me being born in the early 80s in Jamaica, Queens, my parents were immigrants from Guyana. So they left when Guyana was facing basically the ails of third world colonization. They gained their independence but had no infrastructure. Mm-hmm. So it was a mass exodus. My pops ended up in Flatbush, Brooklyn, slightly before I was born. And then after he got married to my mom, they moved to Queens, and then, they moved into the Jamaica section. So we were living in like a basement, 4 or 5 of us. My little sister came a little bit later, and this was normal. We came into life, and I say it in the piece. I just remember hearing these sounds like normalizing of sirens, seeing caution tapes, hearing gunshots sounding like fireworks. And as I also say, it led, now that I could look at it as a grown man back on what it was escapism. I've had a very active imagination. So, you know, my mom, like, no, come home when the street lights come on, you know, old school, you know, come inside when it was this sense of urgency. Don't hang around this, don't hang around that, don't stay away from that corner store too. You know, it's like these little things, but I didn't know why. It was just like this restriction and this and that. And that environment led me to, you know, I say in the story, just starting out as a kid, cap guns, water guns, throwing water balloons at the homies, just innocent childhood fun. And then I kind of go a little bit into it, but when the street lights came on, we got a little bit deeper. You know, we were kids messing around. We threw rocks at windows. You know, we picked up 40 bottles and smashed them on the floor and like played games like Manhunt 1, 2, 3. And then next thing you know, we're aiming these water guns and cap guns at each other innocently. And then, you know, we go home, and at that time, my era, we went home and played with G.I. Joes and these toys. And I just go into that it was an escape. And then that led me later on to fast forwarding when music changed. You know, I came up when hip hop became very big. So then, like, especially that soundtrack when Nas, Wu-Tang. My mom used to work at the Coliseum on Jamaica Avenue, 165th Street. So they shot the ice cream video over there. So now seeing this whole hip hop energy, and you know, in the play I say when I was a young kid playing with toy guns, I told my mom I wanted to join the military and be a cop. That was like what represented, now I could articulate it, it represented masculinity to me. Me and my pops, you know, my pops went through schizophrenia, so me and him did not have the tightest relationship, and I turned inward to a lot of things, and my imagination and, you know, the television and the games with my friends, now I looked at it, it planted a seed of something that I kind of developed in the second act to how these things that were planted in me now fostered into something that would lead me, you know, I don't want to give away too much of the play, but lead me to a role. But I really try to humanize that role that I'm in, to say that, like, I wasn't necessarily a bad person. I wasn't a stone cold anything. This was just, like, honestly being a product of my environment and normalizing a lot of things who I looked up to, and the people who I looked up to, you know, they were people who did things that I would never do in today. But, like, because, you know, I had my issues growing up with the family, this is what I aspired to be. So a lot of those stories came in through just me coming of age and finding myself. And honestly, I see the connection to masculinity and the idea that needing protection and going through what I did and escapism. And then, you know, I dive into how I got into, you know, my usage with weed a lot, and then hustling and selling, you know, innocently. It just starts to get deeper and deeper and deeper. And the next thing you know, the walls are closing in on you, and you're just like, holy shit, what's going on? You know, and then you're there, and then now you're reactionary to this, like you're digging your own grave, and then you realize you dug it so deep you can't get out. And that really is something that I faced in my life. I didn't know it was trauma, you know?
So what do you think was the main thing that led you to, like, dealing and getting into that life and on the streets?
It was a gumbo. It was like almost like I could call it a stone soup. It was first this fascination with, I need to be tough. I think that's what those toys and those things showed me, is like, you know, the idea that I feel that was instilled in me through environment and television and these video games and everything was, you got to be tough, you got to be strong, you can't show feelings. These are weak. These are weakness. So, like, I just kind of went hyper into this, you know, phase. And then, it was just really, it's tough to describe because, you know, it's so long ago. But now that I feel like I can look back on it objectively now. And then another thing was, influence, man. When I saw the people in my neighborhood who looked like they were succeeding and doing well, because, you know, they were hustlers and dealers in my block and on my neighborhood. But to me, that was the guy who gave me ice cream every time, you know? That was the guy who had the beautiful women or something. It didn't equate to me that these were bad people doing bad things. They were very nice to me. They were very, like, you know, they would give me $1 or $2 when I went to the corner store to buy something for my mom. So it was like, you know, it was a slow and steady build. And, you know, with my group of friends, we kind of dabbled into it. And it just was a course of a long time that it got deeper and deeper and deeper. And now I could say I was facing some depression. I was facing some trauma based around my childhood and my upbringing. And I think it was that coupled with the environment. Because other people could go through what I went through, but I don't think if they had like the home experience and those kind of things. Also, I think a big thing was immigrant household. My family's strict West Indies family. So like there was this big thing, go to school, do this, do everything the right way, be the right way, do everything by the book. So by the time I hit my teenage years, it was like a rebel factor growing in me because my parents were raising me a certain way. And then the music and the culture and school was kind of showing me this other world that I kind of wanted to dance into, and it was a bit of curiosity too. So, just wanting to, become a man. Now I could look at it as even a rite of passage,
Right.
to those things, and admiration of the people who had the things that at the time I desired. And for me, it was like a one-way street to get those things. And I embarked on a road, and I didn't look back for a couple of years. Yeah.
So I know one of the most powerful points in the play is your relationship to, I think, your cousin, who's a cop.
Yeah.
And that, like I said, that is one of the most powerful points in the play or this theatric. Do you want to tell about that situation?
Yeah, I can tell that story for sure. So after my cousin joined the police academy in force, he worked as a regular patrolman for a while, and he moved up. He went up to the rank of detective, and then he was transferred. He got transferred to the Bronx. And through that situation, that was when, I indicated in the piece too that he was facing something. I felt something from him because he was just like, yo, you need to do this, you need to do this. And I asked him, well, what about you? How are you doing? You just had a kid, you're a detective now, you're undercover, you're in the deep hood, like what's going on? And he was kind of like, I don't really want to talk about it, So I was almost like, even then I was acute to like, why are you helping me and you don't want to talk about your situation? He was asking me to talk about my situation, but when I kind of turned the mic to him, it was silence. And that was an indicator to me. Sometimes they say 90% of communication is nonverbal. Right. So I knew he was holding in something. And then his energy got a little bit different. And, I heard he was going through some things with his wife and a divorce and that. And then, he ended up, unfortunately, without warning, without a note, committing suicide, and by way of a weapon, with one gunshot to his head. And then when that happened to me, that blew me away because I had already had a friend who got murdered, and then this one was self-inflicted. So I was like, what if this is what's happening to the Rock and the good person, what's going to happen to the rest of us? Like,
now, while that was going on, were you in the streets?
Yeah, it was, he kind of knew because like he picked up when I started smoking weed heavily. And he kind of gave me the look out. And then when I got stabbed and, I had to tell my mom to move these weapons in case the police searched the house, and I had to tell my friends flush whatever weed down the toilet, I had to come clean. I had to be honest. So that's when he saw that I was kind of dancing with something deeper. Because he was like, bro, it's one thing if you're smoking and doing this, but he's like, now you're selling it, now you're carrying a weapon. He's like, you're on thin ice, bro. And then he insisted when the mandatory sentence law was passed, 3 to 5, he was like, bro, this is no trial, no question. They catch you with that, you're done. And he really, he was even like, forget the weed. He was like, this thing, he was like, this is it. He was like, I'm pretty sure he locked up people for that. They just got a gun on him, boom, proven that they had it on him, done. And he was like, he even said, I'm helping you now, but if you get caught with that, there's even nothing I could do. So it was like a premonition almost. And it was really hard. And yeah, when he had went out, that was a tipping point because my friend had already did. So like, unfortunately, I was learning the same lesson deeper and deeper over again. And his death was kind of like a big turning point in my life where I turned more into the arts and heavily, I had one foot in, one foot out before, but after his death, boom, I decided really to dedicate myself to creating art from a space of healing, and I thank him, but it's weird how, right, people are put in your life for a certain reason, and his mom came the last day.
Oh, yeah.
And she watched it, and she said, I felt his presence in the room, and that was one of the most amazing things.
Yeah, that's a gift. That is a gift.
Thank you.
That's great. I don't know if the piece is so reflective of your life, and I'm talking about the act one, is reflective of your life. And when it turns to act two, you can see that. It's like it's a beautiful piece. And I encourage people to, if you can see the product of this young brother's work,
Wow.
you'll definitely learn something.
Yeah.
It is an experience.
Oh, thank you. I didn't think it was going to be this hard to do. I think I said that in the Q&A that you attended. Like, this piece gets harder to do the more I do it, because, you know, when you think, like, some things that shape your life, it's like you have to face your fears head on. So it's like, for 10 shows, 5 weeks in a row, I was going at the things that, like, you know, brought me to the lowest points in my life. And I was staring them in the face and reliving them as if they were my now. And I had people come to the show and they're like, oh man, you know, are you getting better now? And I'm like, nah, I'm over it. But for them, they think that's where I'm at right now. And I'm like, nah, guys, that's a lot of these stories are, you know, more than 10 years removed. So it's an honor. That's how I know it was still, I needed to heal from it, because how am I able to reenact something that's so long as if it just happened yesterday? And like, I tremble after a lot of the shows. Sometimes I couldn't sleep after the shows. I had nightmares. It was really, really something that I didn't know, because I was like, I wrote this script and it was easy to write, you know, like a lot of the ideas. But when I took it to the stage and I had to change certain lines and really honor those moments that are real, I had to throw a lot of it. And the crew was getting a little tight with me. They're like, you're changing the line. It says this in the script. And I was like, no, I have to change it because my spirit is calling me. And yeah, I had to let, you know, when you create art, I think you build it up to a point where the art becomes a life of its own. And it takes you in. So I built this thing, and then it kind of like snatched me up and consumed me.
Yeah, and then you at that point you have to listen to the art.
You gotta, and that's why I'm here. Like, I'm very serious about working with you guys, and that's why I'm so honored, because you guys are from my neighborhood, you know, multi-generational relationships, and like, this is my first time even in Queens Public. I've done Brick and Brooklyn Public Access, and like, this is amazing to me that I'm able to build this relationship with my community, and like, I'm so honored to be able to do that. But to me, like, I'm always working on building this exhibition to honor your story, brother, and the people who participated in Act One with me, to let my story still open the door for them and hopefully touch them in the same way you were touched, or let them reflect into their own way.
Now, can you explain one of the best or most rewarding experience that you have gotten out of this experience yet far?
Definitely watching people's testimonies. There's a scene in to where the transition from Act One to Act Two, where we break down the stage, we take away the prop weapon, and we just put this chair in a spotlight. And it's right before I enter the stage and do my thing. And wow, that stage is, the stories that come from that chair are amazing to me. From callous demeanor to, I don't know, to like people breaking down in tears.
Do we have another clip of the confessions?
I think so, yeah.
Can we actually play that?
I feel like both.
Sure. I mean, I would still say the shot.
I'm thinking maybe both.
I say the shooter.
Yeah, maybe both.
I guess both in their own right.
Both.
I don't know. It's okay. I'll see no more.
Yeah, so see, that brings it back. So people will now, like I said, there are so many experiences that I love the fact that there are so many experiences that you get. And even if a person knows now what the experience is, I think it's beautifully done where you're collecting the footage, and that's also going to make a piece. It's going to make an experience for people to get immersed in.
That's the key, brother, because I feel like for someone to change, it's up to you to change, right? You know, you could get inspired by something, someone else, read a book or that, but like a switch has to flip internally, and that switch, in my opinion, only happens through experience. So that's why I'm very, very, I feel I'm so attentive to like, what do other people get out of this? That's why I'm so fascinated to talk to anyone who's been through this piece, because people come to me and they're like, oh man, your part is so great, your acting's phenomenal, your performance. And I was like, I just keep focusing on y'all and the testimony and the Q&A. Because to me, it's like, I realize that this is bigger than me, you know, and I want people to, that's why that word immersive really plays into mind, because if we're going to change what's going on in society, it has to be felt, you know, and I think what the goal of this project has been is now to do that. And in the exhibition, we're going to allow people to walk through those testimonies more in depth, see a cycle of over 50 people giving their testimonies in length.
Yeah.
And we're going to have
See,
some mugshots.
another experience.
Yeah, that's what I'm about right now, because for a lot of times in my life as art is a Vic Mensa. I heard him say this. He said, the duty of art is to make those who are comfortable uncomfortable and to comfort those who are not, you know? So like, that's what I try to do. Like people who are living in privilege where they think, oh no, people just don't pick up guns if that would work, or don't do these, you know, if those cliche things worked, they would have worked, but they're not working.
Right.
And also like, America has a crazy thing in my mind that like, we're not owning up to what we did as a country. Like Germany had to own up to Hitler and what happened, right? We never had to own up to the genocide of the indigenous people on this landmass. We never had to own up to slavery and the 13th Amendment and all this stuff and the criminal industrial complex and this whole thing. You know, the connection to law enforcement, to slave catchers, it's there. You know, I want to go too deep into it. Read Howard Zinn, People's History of the United States of America. You know, read Willie Lynch letters. Like, you can see that this thing is implemented. So when I'm trying to do something that's combating all of that stuff, it has to go deep. And now even on the exhibition, I want people to start to feel uncomfortable in there, because I'm learning if people just come sip some wine and cheese and watch me get on stage and perform, that defeats the whole purpose of Act 1. And because it's going to be 100 to 200 people in this premiere, I can't just have everybody do it. So I had to really immerse them in the stories, because that's what's going to make them feel comfortable. I'm working on a theatrical element that I won't give away that will go on during there.
More experience.
Yeah, it's got to be experience. Experience is the greatest teacher. You know.
Now in this clip that we saw,
yes,
it speaks to what we said in the opener as who is the victim.
Yeah.
And I think in the play, it's the shooter or the shot.
Yeah, that's how we say it, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so, now, I forget, do you actually answer that question?
At the end, actually, right at the end, I go back into the chair right before the Q&A. That's the final scene of Act 2, yeah.
So now, has your opinion changed since you've gone through the whole experience?
Yeah, I went from saying, because, you know, I did answer both a lot to we're both victims, and then I started saying we're all victims in some way of life. That no matter who you are in life, there is going to be something that, and now how I look at it is when you look at this relationship between the victim and the perpetrator, right? It's almost like an energy balance that could occur between like student and teacher, romantic partners, boyfriend, girlfriend, 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 boyfriend, boyfriend, whatever floats people's boat now, or whatever's there. I see that that's the deeper dynamic than just the gun thing, because because if you're perpetuating something, it's like being the aggressor, and sometimes it might be a parent saying, you better get your homework done and get a 90 on your report card. In a way, it's the same thing energetically. And it's that shooter or shot where are you the one behind it, where the child might feel like, oh man, I got to do my homework, I got to do this, or I better get a 90 on the test, or I'm going to, you know, get kicked out of my house, or who knows what. And then you might be the perpetrator of it, where maybe that kid who's talked that way might go to someone in their classmate and be like, yo, give me your homework right now, because I got to get this 90, you know? So it perpetuates this cycle that I think is beyond gun violence. So what has changed in my perspective is really how I like to say this piece explores the roles of victim and perpetrator through the lens of gun violence. But the roles of victim and perpetrator are deeper. Even in a two-person conversation, there's dominant energies, passive energies, and those roles can switch. And there's a constant in dialogue and in life, there's this power struggle that occurs between people in all sorts of situations, coworkers, relationships, you name it, friendships, it's there. So I think what happened is after I did 5 or 6 runs, that deeper thread to this overarching experience started to really hit me, and I started to realize how we're all victims and perpetrators in our own way, whether someone admit it or not. And once again, that's how I feel, and I'm not expecting anybody to hear what I have, but that was an inner discovery that made me more humble to respect people. Also, like for people who are in those situations, I feel that they're dehumanized. Me, if you would have caught me on a bad day when I was 22, selling that weed with that gun in my hand, and cops got me, they would have put, oh, this guy's hustling, he's this, carrying a weapon, throw him under the bus. But I want to humanize those people too, because you meet me now, it's all love, but like, there's a lot of people who may have never got out of the mindset that I was in when I was 18. And I really feel like I'm being a voice for those people, and being a voice for any of those people who are like in a situation, maybe they're locked up and they're on their 5th year and they got a 3 to 5, or maybe they shot somebody and caught a murder charge and now they regret it every day. Like, what are those people? And like, they're kind of outcasted for society. They removed their right to vote. They're, everything is gone for them. So I'm lucky in essence that I'm still here to tell it. And I hope that other people, especially people from my community and the neighborhoods that are like mine that I grew up in, that these people know that they have a voice through art. And I'm really, really excited for the community to experience this. Because people go, oh, go to Broadway. And like, I told you in the library, brother, I'm really
everybody wants you to go to
Lin-Manuel
Broadway.
Hamilton.
Exactly,
like,
but because we want to see you succeed. We want to see
and
that
I'll do
other
it. Like, I'll do it, but that's not the goal. Like,
Right.
Said,
I understand.
I would do it. That's almost like a side benefit. It's kind of like, and that's why I know I'm in a great place, because that's not the ultimate goal. Like when I was making music in my albums, it was always like a Grammy or this and that. But now it's like, could I heal somebody, or could somebody go through this and help heal themselves? Right. Even better said. So to create a space for healing, and once again, I shout out Paulo Freire. Anybody can read it, Pedagogy of the Oppressed. That book helped me understand like what I want to infuse in the art that I'm creating. And of course, even when Frank, produced this, showed me some of his work, I know I'm not alone, that people care about saying things that are like the elephant in the room. And artists have to be risk takers. And if you're not a risk taker, I just feel like then you're just perpetuating the societal norms. There's nothing against that, but if you want to change a norm, you have to, be a trailblazer. And I think making this piece more immersive, doing it in Jamaica, and making sure that people know this art was like for the community, by the community, because we're facing gentrification heavily there. So as a lot of money comes in, I saw the art center talking about, we're going to bring in so-and-so from LES, from Brooklyn, from Williamsburg, from this to come and see you and this. And I was like, I want the homie from 40 Projects who served the 3 to 5 and is stuck in his crib and couldn't get a job for years, who's sitting in his grandmother's apartment in the projects. I want that. So
tell the audience how they can get some of this experience.
Yeah.
And like where they can find you and what's coming up next.
This is just the beginning for the beast, but shooterart.com, and on the website we have an Instagram link and we have an email that you can click on right there to contact us with any questions, and all upcoming performances and things will be there. And then of course, if you guys want to reach out to me directly, we have shooterart@gmail.com. info@shooterart.com.
We'd like to thank our guest again for being on the show. And we'd like to thank you for joining us around the fire. And until we meet again, be safe and be empowered.